When she stirred, Alexander lifted his hand and broke their connection. Her lips had regained their blush pink, and her eyelids fluttered, but she did not wake. "Sleep, sunshine," he whispered, covering her up once again. Emotion clamored in his heart. Relief that she was alive, curiosity about what had brought her here, anxiety that he'd done everything and he'd still failed to rouse her, anger at himself because he'd used the greatest power of St. Nicholas, resurrection. It had been his ancestors' greatest gift, and it had been outlawed by past kings. This woman hadn't been dead, merely on the brink of it, and yet he'd summoned it, and the power had come. What right did he have to the legacy he'd abandoned? And why? Why should he be relieved? He didn't know her, not truly. She was a fool lost in a snowstorm. She'd interrupted his plan to go, away, far away. For a moment he considered leaving. She'd survive the storm. But one glance at her, peaceful, innocent, and his wretched heart revolted at the idea. He turned his attention to the fireplace. He called on his magic once again. He summoned a spark. It was all he needed. He blew it from the palm of his hand and into the fireplace, where it roared to life. They'd need more firewood. They'd need water and food. All of that would come later. First, he had one final thing to do, before he allowed himself a moment of rest. Alexander walked outside. He squinted against the falling snow and found Killian around back in the single-stall stable where the guardian's horse usually slept. The reindeer clopped to his hooves, alert. Alexander buried his face in the creature's side. He secured the saddle and left his sword in its sheath. He wouldn't need it any more. "Killian," he said. A shudder passed through him, but he pushed back the emotion that wanted to clamber to the surface. He wasn't ready. "I release you of your vow, old friend. You can go home." The reindeer followed him, but Alexander locked the door of the cabin and pressed his body against it. He ran a palm over his hair. He needed to rest. But then he saw it. A bruise at the center of his palm. No, not a bruise. Inky threads. The coil of a vine. He rubbed at it, as if he expected it to brush away like soot. The mark of the saint had taken root.